Cohen Bradford had a great run last time he was in this arena in his Pairs Cup match. A lot of people might have thought he was playing the European Open for experience, but far from it. He's topping his group at the moment. He's been the standout player. I think we're all very excited to see him out in this arena. What a great opportunity it is. Change around to the commentary box. Stephen Jameson jumps in alongside me. I think this should be a fun match.
Yeah, pleasure to be on the comms for this one, Mark. Two brilliant players, and I think we're starting to reach the point where we need to almost stop talking about Cohen Bradford like he's not a brilliant player. He's starting to really earn his stripes. 4 wins out of 4 already in the European Open, including 3 wins over Ultimate Pool Pros. This is his toughest test though. Karl came into this group as the group favourite by quite a way, and we are looking here at 2 players who are already qualified into the last 64, so no big jeopardy on this game, but a great showcase of 2 fabulous players who are bang in form.
Yeah, I mean, Karl Sutton, what a year he's had. We talked extensively yesterday about his World Championship campaign. Couldn't have done any more, beaten by the only player that could stop him in the final in the shape of Ronan McCarthy. And you have different storylines throughout tournaments like this. Got 3 great young players. We've got a 15-year-old that we're seeing now, plus a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old in action in this European Open, all giving good accounts of themselves. None better though than Cohen. What a moment, topping a group with so many established pros in. Karl Sutton's a tough test for anybody though. You know the standard he's going to turn up with. He's not someone that turns up and hands you the match. He's always consistent. We saw a great standard of play in the last match. Stevie Dempsey against John McAllister. Couldn't ask for a better game than that. The only thing it didn't have was a deciding frame after the slight misadventure John had on the final black to take it to that decider. Other than that, it was break and clearances of the highest order. Rock solid as always from Sutton. Loads of space to play for here. Just needs to get the white anywhere down this end of the table. Perfect as you'd expect, and Carlos does what he always does, 1-0 in no time at all.
He was just unlucky that he ran into a special performance and just didn't quite get the same amount of chances. That can happen at that level of the game. It very often doesn't in a world final, but it did. So a big test for Cohen here, because you can't imagine Karl will give him too much by way of unforced errors or opportunities that he hasn't had to earn himself. And if Cohen is to go 5 from 5 in this group, which would be a huge achievement, he's going to have to break a little better as well. Decent split, but he lost the cue ball, and going straight into the middle pocket is a bit of a cardinal sin, as Karl well knows, having jawed the middle pocket on his very good frame number 1, but he's not going to be too worried about that. These reds are all pretty inviting, and he can deal with his most difficult 3 first, which always helps.
Powerful break from Cohen, despite the in-off. You can see how he's going to have been doing well off that break if he can keep the cue ball on the table. There are times when you look at some of the big breaking players and say, well, they're big guys, that's why they're breaking so well. But if you look how slight Cohen is, if he's getting that level of power, it shows how much it's down to the timing and technique.
Yeah, and I know you're an aficionado of the finer points, if you like, Mark, the sort of the technique and all the rest of it. I wrote a book on it, but in terms of what we're looking at with Cohen and his fundamentals, if you like, we've talked a lot about his mentality and how impressed we've been with his composure on the big stage, but fundamentally, how do you sort of assess him?
Well, it's looked good from what we've seen so far. It's quite a textbook approach, isn't it? Sometimes you don't get that with kids coming through. They've ended up learning to sort of self-taught, and maybe over the years they sort of straighten different bits of it out. But it looks like from an early age he knows the right way to play. You were making the point yesterday about his temperament as well, which is such a key feature. At a young age, people are so often technically capable, but maybe a little bit impatient, but he doesn't seem to have too much of that.
Yeah, and that's the harder one to teach, actually. So the fact that he's got that already, I think, is a real boon for him. But someone who also has a brilliant temperament is Karl Sutton. 2-0 up he goes. You can sort of lose the reality of the situation, but because Karl's always pessimistic, he always sees the worst side of it. It almost always gives him something to chase, which probably isn't a bad thing, because he's already a world-class player. But if he thinks he still can improve, he's still got places to go, he can't afford to make mistakes because his opponent will get the rub of the green or whatever it might be. I don't think it's necessarily a bad mentality to have, if you see my point.
No, definitely, and it's served him very well over a fairly extensive career. I do think, though, in the last couple of months, I mean, that last man standing was back in May. Since then, he's had the Pro Series and the World Championships where he had that run. He has looked a bit more confident. There's been less of the sort of overt negativity. I mean, as I say, as we say, it's not a bad thing at all. It's not in any way meant as a criticism. It serves him well. But if you add in those tournament runs, he's obviously feeling good about his game.
Yeah, I think there's a difference, isn't there? There's his overall general attitude, which is never going to change. It's just how one sort of has their outlook on life. But there's also just general confidence around a table, and Karl has sort of, as many players do, sort of toed and froed a little bit with that. But at the minute, make no mistake, it's as confident as I've seen Karl for a sustained period of time since he won that Pro Series a couple of years ago. And he told us on the Pairs Cup on Monday, actually, him and Chippy were back in action, that he took a little bit of time after the World Championships to have a break from the game, which I think is good and healthy, because it is such an exhausting and all-encompassing 3 weeks. But he's come back, and it would have been easy, I think, to almost feel a bit flat after that sort of disappointment. But he looks like he's stayed the course and kept the same sort of level and confidence, and really pleased for him because of that, because now he comes into this event and he's one of the favourites to win it for me. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, he's a technically excellent player. He's a tactically excellent player as well, which is why he's had a good run at the World Championships. Years gone by with different rule sets that favoured a tactical game, he was always very expert at that.
He's told me a number of times the switch to international rules is the worst thing that ever happened to him.
But in fairness, although he's said that a few times, he's really embraced it, hasn't he, in the last year or two?
Well, he's just a very smart man. He figures things out very, very well. It's why he's a good pool player. His patterns are exceptional. Immediately defers to the cut break, having hit the middle bag on his front ball first time around. I mean, that's brutal. Whew. How'd you like that?
That's a tough result, isn't it? That is not a common pocket to go in off with that break. Look how it's happened as well.
Yeah, you can't really legislate for that.
I'm slightly surprised that he switched so soon, because actually his first break was a good break. He got about as good a split as he could have done. It was only the in off, and that just requires a slight correction to the line.
Well, we will see a lot of improvement in Cohen. Someone like Karl, who's played the game for years, we know he's at a world-class level, and that form might dip and deviate or accelerate at times, but we know he's at the level he's capable of. But also, you'd be surprised if you saw a marked improvement in Karl's top level. We've already seen him, be the best in the world, basically. But for Cohen, there's so much ceiling there for him to still reach. The game's his oyster, really, in this sense. And I think it'll be interesting to see as he gets older and he improves, that break will probably improve with it. Probably feels at the minute that whilst he can time the cue ball and get the power through, maybe he's not as certain that he can keep the line while he does that, as Karl makes his first mistake in the match, and it's going to let Cohen in. Surprising miss there from Karl. don't think he missed it by much. I'm a little bit surprised it stayed up, although pleasantly surprised, I should say. And Cohen's little bit of bad luck continues there, as I can't believe he's not knocked that yellow in, which would have helped his cause.
One of the tests for Cohen will be how he deals with the adversity that will come. He's going on a bit of a run at the moment. That Pairs Cup was a great result, and then he's obviously having a great run here. There's always going to be highs and lows. It's how you deal with the lows, and you keep telling yourself you are an improving player and things are going to go well. And it's also difficult, of course, when you're in your mid to late teens. You've got other distractions as well. You've got the ones you're supposed to have, like schoolwork, and the ones you're not supposed to have, which can sometimes creep in. Where Paul ranks in amongst everything else in your life.
And again, just a little bit unlucky. He's tried to play the loss of turn there, and he's missed that by a hair. But again, the vision was there.
Yeah, it was the right shot to be thinking about, just ever so slightly off on execution.
May cost him this frame though.
Bit to be done still for Karl. He's got that ball near the left centre, which isn't really going anywhere. The two balls to the right of the 8 ball aren't quite a plant. Maybe he can just make them. Well, that's dealt with those ones, so just down to the one problem left. The ball over the corner pocket is the obvious way into the ball that's tied up on the left, but wouldn't be guaranteed to land on something else, which is why you'd be a bit concerned about playing it like that.
As we spoke about, Karl does have brilliant vision for the game, and he will absolutely have his plan made up on this yellow.
Oh, he's found a gap that didn't look like it existed. That's a great double.
Yeah, how good was that? See the pace that he put into the ball there? He really had to straighten it up quickly, because this is eye of a needle stuff, this.
Well, that was the thing. He had to get it wide to get it past the 8 ball, and then, as you say, straighten it so that the red didn't come into play.
Yeah, and you notice it went, as we looked at it from the overhead angle, right into the left side of the pocket. He didn't have the middle of the pocket there on that line because the red was in the way. That was a really good shot, and, well, made one mistake in that frame, Karl. As we so often say with the best players in the world, they may give you one chance. They very, very rarely give you two. Just having time out there in the arena, you can't put a price on that at his age and at his stage of his young career. And, you know, Karl's been, he still gets the odd tickle nerves and all the rest of it, because, you know, who wouldn't? But he's very quick to settle in this environment now because he's so experienced in it. But Cohen's had much less of that. But it's not just the lights and the cameras and the showpiece nature, it's also the equipment. The table plays so much different there than it does just about anywhere else.
And you've got to enjoy it as well. One of the most memorable parts of the opening speeches at the World Championships, Barbara Taylor, the chairman of the EPA, made the good point that everyone there should be grateful to be at that tournament, because how many people would swap to be playing in a world-class tournament with world-class facilities in an arena? Well, she was talking about the World Championship, but the same applies here. This is a great standard tournament, great conditions. Everyone wants to be the centre of attention like this. First chance in real open play this for Cohen. Just looking at where he'd need to be to get access to the yellow that's closest to the left centre. He's played this well, because even if he can't quite get to the potting angle, he can push the yellow in off the red if he does need to straighten it up. That's exactly what he has done, which has allowed him to hold position. Looking at taking the last yellow long. Don't know if you can see it. If you could see it straight now, there'd be a case for playing it first, but this way is fine as well. And that's the first real unforced error from a good position. Just thinking about trying to get the angle to get across the table, which he didn't also do quite right, to leave as straight as possible on the last yellow. And this has got to be a confidence booster for Karl. He's made so much of his own chances, but he has now been given a couple of chances as well.
Refreshing as well to, I think, a real indicator of and a reminder of just how young Cohen is looks like, to me, like a J2O in that class for him, which anyone who ever had a kid's holiday on a holiday park knows that's the drink of choice for any discerning teenager. Tony Holgate's in the studio with us and has just looked at us like he didn't have J2Os at this age, did our Tony, but that's fine. Horses for courses and all that.
Well, we'll get you on during the next match, Tony. We'll show you what the fuss is all about.
It's good gear. It's good gear.
He's not actually the only one. There's been a few people with a drink looking like that. There were a couple of guys playing last night.
Yeah, performance enhancing, I'd say.
Example of the gap between the players. And the year Cohen was born, Karl Sutton was making a deep run in the World Championships. He's been around at the top level for a while.
Yeah, that is amazing, isn't it? Yeah, he's just come up a little awkward here, Karl. He's okay. Making a bit of a song and dance about it, but I expect him to get back into position off this shot. Yeah, he's okay.
Yeah, he's just going to have to settle for one more difficult pot, but this affords a very natural position, so he can just focus on potting the ball. Well, this has been some school from Karl Sutton. We've seen very few one-sided matches on this main table. This is only the third match where one player has run away with it, and well into double figures that we've shown over the last day and a half.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out as well that young Cohen here hasn't done a huge amount wrong. He's made maybe one proper unforced error when he's had the chance at a frame, and a little bit unlucky with a loss of turn attempt that he played. That's the cut break he was looking for the last time he came to the table, and this is, what's his first shot going to be? A fairly presentable opportunity, I would say. Just at first glance you think it must be yellows. His first yellow is a little bit thin, but I think it gives him decent position just about that first shot really. And the yellow on the right hand side. Reds are trickier.
Yeah, from a neutral perspective, you're obviously rooting for Cohen to show off what he can do and get at least one good clearance on the board.
Well, he's looking at the table, and I think that's not a terrible idea. Yeah, this one is a longer pot, but I think offers him greater control. But needed to make it.
Yeah, that was the first sign of nerves. He kind of decelerated, got across that one a bit.
Still open table as well, which is always important. Remember, wobbly. Remember a certain Declan Brennan speaking to me after the World Masters final a couple of years ago. He took out a big finish in the crucial frame in that one, and started with a pretty mad combination shot. And he said to me after that, well, I didn't really have any concern about playing it because the right shot's always the right shot. If it's the first one or the last one, you know when the right shot is to play. And And that was a little glimpse of that from Cohen there. He played the right shot, wasn't afraid to necessarily take on the riskier shot, knowing he'd hand over the right suit in this frame.
Yeah, it's a very elite mindset for someone like Declan, because you're thinking that if you don't win the frame, the other guy's going to. If you watch any pool at a level even slightly lower than this, it can still be quite a high level, but you definitely see people playing easier shots to guarantee a colour or to not look silly at the beginning of a frame. It's very hard to talk yourself into taking on a very difficult pot right at the start. That was a good shot. Narrow gap to find there. Still got a bit of travel to do, because the balls on the left and right hand side of the bottom of the table don't really link up very well with each other.
No, and the one link ball he does have is quite far from both. It's about finding a nice line to come down here on. It's not terrible. I think the yellow will be probably at distance to this bottom right. Been rock solid with pots at any distance so far in this match. That was a good shot as well, because he had to load up with a bit of spin. The natural angle was taking the cue ball further to the left than that. Had to just slightly fight it to make this last ball a bit easier. Yeah, just very good, isn't it, from Karl? Very, very good indeed. Well, must say, one of the players that I really fancy for this tournament. Super performance from Karl Sutton, a 6-0 win over Cohen Bradford, who won 4 of his 5 matches, and hope, really for his sake, that he can take the positives from that, rather than necessarily the result of his final match, where he was shut out, really, by a super display from the world runner-up. Karl Sutton charges into the last 64, where he will be joined by Cohen Bradford, I should say.